The lawyer's son wasn't deaf. The maid revealed the truth that the father insisted on denying. Amanda knelt before the 5-year-old boy, adjusting the green headphones he constantly wore, when she noticed something that made her tremble. Ethan turned his head toward the house doorbell, even before she touched his shoulder to alert him about the visitor. Dr. Richard Thompson, one of Chicago's most renowned lawyers, had insisted for 2 years that his son was born completely deaf. Any questioning of the diagnosis was immediately cut off with threats or subject changes. The child lived practically isolated in that mansion in Winnetka, surrounded only by tutors specialized in sign language and by Amanda herself, who had worked as a domestic employee for the family for just 3 months. "Ethan, let's wash our hands for snack time," said Amanda quietly, more to herself than to the boy. To her surprise, Ethan immediately stood up and walked toward the bathroom, without her needing to touch him or gesture. Amanda felt a tightening in her chest. Something was very wrong there. Jennifer, Ethan's mother, worked as an executive at a multinational company and traveled constantly. In the few moments she was home, she accepted without question her husband's explanations about the special care their son needed. Richard always had a ready justification for every behavior of the child. He developed other senses in a compensatory way, the lawyer would explain whenever someone found Ethan's reactions strange. It's normal in children with hearing impairment. But Amanda had experience. Before working for the Thompsons, she had cared for a truly deaf child in the Miller family in Buckhead. She knew how to recognize the true signs of deafness, and Ethan showed none of them. That afternoon, while tidying the boys' room, Amanda heard something that left her paralyzed. Ethan was whispering a lullaby very softly, thinking he was alone. His voice was clear and in tune, showing that he could perfectly hear his own voice and modulate the tone. "Ethan," she called softly. The boy turned quickly, his eyes wide with fright, and put back on the headphones he had taken off for a few minutes. Amanda approached him slowly, her heart racing. "You were singing, weren't you?" she asked in sign language, but also whispering the words. Ethan shook his head no, but his eyes showed fear. Fear of what? Or of whom? It was then that Richard appeared in the bedroom doorway, his impeccable suit contrasting with the serious expression he wore. "Amanda, I need to speak with you. Now." The maid followed her employer to the office, an imposing space with shelves filled with law books and framed diplomas on the walls. Richard closed the door and positioned himself behind the solid mahogany desk. "What were you doing in my son's room?" he asked, his voice controlled but threatening. "Just tidying up, Dr. Richard, as I always do." "And what were you talking about?" Amanda hesitated. There was something in the lawyer's expression that warned her of the danger of revealing what she had observed. "Nothing important. I was just organizing his toys." Richard studied her in silence for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity. Then his expression softened slightly. "Amanda, you are a competent employee, and Jennifer really likes your work. But I need you to understand one thing. Ethan has very specific special needs. Any change in his routine could be harmful to his development. That's why I ask that you follow exactly the guidelines that were given and not take any initiatives of your own." "Of course, Dr. Richard. I understand perfectly." "Excellent. You may return to work." But even after leaving the office, Amanda couldn't forget Ethan's melodious whisper or how he had reacted when called. There was much more to that situation than the lawyer let on. In the following days, she began observing Ethan more closely. During playtime, when he thought nobody was watching, the boy reacted to subtle sounds. The noise of a truck passing on the street, the sound of the blender in the kitchen. Even the neighbor's cat's soft meow made Ethan lift his head toward the sound. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us who are just starting out. Now continuing. A week later, Amanda caught Ethan in a situation that confirmed her suspicions. The boy was in the garden, playing with his building blocks, when she asked a question from behind him without him being able to see her lips. "Ethan, do you want cookies or fruit for your snack?" "Cookies," he answered automatically, before realizing what he had done. The boy turned quickly, finding Amanda standing behind him with a shocked expression. The two stared at each other in silence for a few moments, until Ethan began to cry. "Please don't tell Daddy," he begged between sobs. "He'll be really mad at me." Amanda knelt beside the boy and hugged him gently. "Calm down, Ethan, I won't tell anyone. But I need to understand what's happening. You can hear everything, can't you?" Ethan nodded, still crying. "Always?" "I think so. But Daddy said if I tell anyone, he'll send me away from home and I'll never see Mommy again." Amanda's heart broke hearing those words. What kind of father would blackmail a 5-year-old child like that? "And the headphones? Why do you wear them?" "Daddy said it's to make me better, that they'll help me hear better when I grow up. But they make a strange noise inside my ear that hurts sometimes." Amanda examined Ethan's headphones. They were expensive, modern equipment, but there was something different about them. When she turned them on, she noticed they emitted a constant white noise, a sound that made natural hearing difficult. "Ethan, how long have you been using these headphones?" "Since I was little. Daddy said I got sick and now I need to wear them always, except for bath time and sleeping." "And do you remember when you started using them?" Ethan thought for a few moments, his little face concentrated. "I think it was after Daddy and Mommy had a really loud fight. I was really scared and started crying. Then Daddy said it was better if I didn't hear the bad things anymore." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. She was beginning to understand what was really happening in that house, and the situation was much more complex and disturbing than she had imagined. "Ethan, can you do me a favor? When we're alone, can you take off the headphones for a few minutes? Just between us without anyone knowing." The boy hesitated, clearly torn between wanting to please Amanda and fear of the consequences. "But what if Daddy finds out? I'll protect you, I promise." From that day on, Amanda and Ethan developed a secret routine. During times when Richard was at the office or away from home, the boy would take off the headphones for a few minutes. During these periods, Amanda discreetly tested his hearing with various sounds, and Ethan responded to all of them perfectly. But Richard seemed to have a sixth sense for these situations. Several times he appeared unexpectedly when Ethan was without the headphones, forcing the boy to quickly put them back on. On one such occasion, the lawyer confronted Amanda directly. "Amanda, I get the impression you've been questioning my son's medical care. That worries me." "No, Dr. Richard. I'm just following your instructions." "Then why has Ethan been showing signs of agitation lately? Why has he been having nightmares?" Amanda didn't know how to respond. It was true that Ethan had seemed more anxious these past few weeks, but she suspected it was due to the inner conflict he faced between the truth and the charade he was forced to maintain. Maybe it's his age. Children go through phases, don't they? Richard studied her with suspicion. "Amanda, I'll be direct with you. If I find out you're interfering with my son's treatment or questioning his medical guidance, I'll have to let you go immediately. And I guarantee you won't find work in any family household in Chicago. Am I being clear?" "Perfectly clear, Dr. Richard." But even with the threats, Amanda couldn't ignore what she had discovered. During a trip to the supermarket with Ethan, she took the opportunity to visit an electronics store. Under the pretext of buying batteries, she showed the boys headphones to a specialized salesperson. "These are very specific therapeutic headphones," the salesman explained after examining the equipment. "They're used in experimental treatments for certain hearing conditions, but they're controversial. Many professionals don't recommend prolonged use, especially in such young children." "Why?" "They emit frequencies that can mask natural hearing. In theory, they're supposed to stimulate certain regions of the brain, but in practice, they may cause more confusion than benefit." Amanda thanked him for the information and returned home with Ethan, her mind buzzing with new suspicions. If the headphones were experimental and controversial, why did Richard insist on constant use? That night, while Ethan slept, Amanda decided to investigate further. Taking advantage of Richard working in his office and Jennifer having traveled again, she discreetly explored some rooms of the house. In Richard's office, she found a locked drawer. Using a technique she'd learned in her youth, she managed to open it. Inside was a folder with Ethan's medical documents. Her blood ran cold as she read the contents. The oldest tests, dated when Ethan was 3 years old, showed perfect hearing. Report after report confirmed the child had no hearing problems. But there was something even more disturbing. A series of consultations with different doctors, as if Richard was looking for someone to confirm a diagnosis that didn't exist. At the end of the folder, she found a more recent report signed by a doctor she didn't know, confirming profound bilateral deafness. But the dates didn't match. This diagnosis had been made months after Ethan had already been using the headphones. Amanda photographed the documents with her cell phone and put everything back in place. Her mind raced frantically, trying to understand the motivation behind it all. Why would a father fake a disability in his own son? The next day, she managed to have a private conversation with Patricia, the sign language therapist who visited Ethan 3 times a week. The 50-year-old woman seemed tired and melancholy. "Patricia, may I ask an indiscreet question?" "Of course, Amanda." "Do you think Ethan really has hearing problems?" Patricia sighed deeply and looked around to make sure they were alone. "That question has haunted me for months. My experience tells me no, but Dr. Richard pays very well for my services and I have a family to support." "So you suspect too?" "More than suspect. I'm almost certain Ethan hears perfectly. His reactions, his body language, everything indicates normal hearing. But every time I try to broach the subject with Dr. Richard, he cuts me off immediately." "Why don't you go to the proper authorities?" "With what proof? And against an influential lawyer like Richard Thompson? He would destroy me professionally. Moreover, technically, Ethan isn't being physically mistreated. It's a very delicate situation." Amanda understood Jennifer's dilemma, but she couldn't accept the situation passively. A child was being forced to live a lie, and that would certainly bring serious psychological consequences. That afternoon, she decided to try a different approach. When Richard came home from work, she went to him. "Dr. Richard, may I ask a question about Ethan's treatment?" "What do you want to know?" he replied dryly. "It's just that I have a cousin who works in speech therapy, and she mentioned some new treatments for childhood deafness. I thought it might be of interest." Richard's eyes narrowed. "What kind of treatments? Cochlear implants, stem cell therapies, those modern things. She said they've had surprising results." "Ethan is already under proper treatment. There's no need for changes. But if there's a possibility he could hear again—" "Amanda!" Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Ethan has never heard. He was born completely deaf. There's no treatment that can create something that never existed, and I won't have you questioning the medical decisions about my son." Richard's disproportionate reaction confirmed Amanda's suspicions. If Ethan were truly deaf from birth, his father would be interested in any possibility of treatment, not defensive and aggressive. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. A few days later, Mrs. Barbara, Richard's mother and Ethan's grandmother, made an unexpected visit. The elegant and sharp 70-year-old lady had been living abroad for the last 2 years and was seeing her grandson in person for the first time since the headphones had become a permanent part of his life. "Richard, darling, is this equipment really necessary all the time?" she asked after observing Ethan during lunch. "Mother, I've explained, it's part of his treatment. But when Ethan was a baby, he reacted to sounds. I clearly remember him being startled by fireworks, turning his head when I called his name. He was very small. You might be mixing up your memories." Mrs. Barbara didn't seem convinced, but Richard quickly changed the subject. Amanda, who was serving the table, noticed the tension in the conversation. Later, while Richard was in the office, Mrs. Barbara struck up a conversation with Amanda. "My dear, how long have you worked here?" 3 months, Mrs. Barbara." "And what do you think of Ethan? How is he developing?" Amanda hesitated. There was something in the lady's look that suggested she also suspected something. "He's a very smart and affectionate child." "Yes, I can see that. But what about his condition?" "Pardon?" "The deafness, dear. You who spend every day with him, do you believe it's real?" Amanda felt her heart race. Finally, someone in the family was questioning the situation. "Mrs. Barbara, I don't know if I should—" "Dear, I'm that child's grandmother. If something is wrong, I need to know." Amanda made a risky decision. Can I show you something? She took Mrs. Barbara to Ethan's room where he was playing on the floor with his toys, wearing the headphones as always. Amanda asked the grandmother to stay hidden behind the door and from the other side of the room whispered, "Ethan, do you want to come here with me?" The boy immediately turned toward Amanda's voice, stood up, and walked over to her. Mrs. Barbara brought her hand to her chest, clearly shocked. "My goodness, he heard you perfectly." "Mrs. Barbara, I need to tell you everything I've found out." Amanda recounted her observations, the discoveries from the medical documents, and the conversations she had had with Ethan. Mrs. Barbara listened in silence, her expression alternating between disbelief and indignation. "But why would Richard do something like that? What would be the motive?" "I don't know, Mrs. Barbara. That's what distresses me the most." You sighed deeply. "I'll talk to my son tonight. This needs to be clarified." That night's dinner was tense. Mrs. Barbara waited for Ethan to go to sleep to confront Richard directly. "Richard, we need to talk about your son." "What's wrong with Ethan? He's not deaf, is he?" The silence that followed was deafening. Richard turned pale, his hands trembling slightly. "Mother, I don't know what you're talking about. I saw it this afternoon. He reacts to sounds, understands commands given from behind, turns his head toward voices. Richard, what have you done? You don't understand, Mother. You don't understand anything." "Then explain it to me, son. Make me understand why you're pretending your own son is deaf." Richard abruptly stood up from the table and began pacing back and forth. "You want to know why? Because this world is too cruel for a sensitive child like Ethan. Because it's better for him not to hear the horrible things people say, the arguments, the violence, all the evil that's out there." "Richard, are you serious? Completely serious?" "When Ethan was 3 years old, he witnessed a terrible argument between me and Jennifer. A dreadful fight, with shouting, accusations, things a child should never hear. He was traumatized, crying, covering his ears. That's when I realized it would be better to protect him from all that." Mrs. Barbara stared at him with a mixture of horror and pity. "Son, have you lost your mind? You're depriving Ethan of one of the most basic human experiences. He can't hear music, his mother's voice singing to him, the sound of birds. He doesn't need those things. He's safe, protected." "You're sick, Richard, and you're making your son sick too." Amanda, who had overheard part of the conversation from the kitchen, felt tears streaming down her face. She finally understood the twisted motivation behind the whole charade. The next morning, Mrs. Barbara sought out Amanda before leaving. "Dear, I'll talk to Jennifer as soon as she returns from her trip. This situation cannot continue." "What if Dr. Richard fires me?" "Don't worry. I'll make sure you're protected. Ethan needs someone to defend him, and you were brave enough to do that." 2 days later, Jennifer returned from her business trip. Mrs. Barbara was waiting for her in the living room with a serious expression that immediately alerted her daughter-in-law that something was wrong. "Jennifer, dear, I need to talk to you about something very serious." "What happened? Is it about Ethan?" "Partly, yes. Please sit down." Mrs. Barbara told her everything she had discovered. Jennifer listened in absolute silence, her expression gradually changing from confusion to disbelief, and finally to an anger she struggled to control. "Are you telling me my husband faked a disability in my son for 2 whole years?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. But the doctors, the reports..." Amanda found evidence that Richard sought out several professionals until he found one who would confirm the false diagnosis. Jennifer brought her hands to her face, trying to process the information. "My God, all the therapies, the special equipment, the social isolation. I thought I was protecting my son, and I was actually participating in a charade." "You didn't know, dear. Richard deceived all of us. When Richard came home from work that night, he found his wife and mother waiting for him in the living room. The heavy atmosphere immediately alerted him that the truth had been discovered." "Jennifer. Mother. I can explain." "Explain." Jennifer stood up, her voice trembling with contained anger. "Explain how you made me believe our son was hearing impaired for 2 years. Explain how you stole his right to hear. I was protecting both of you, protecting our family." "Protecting from what, Richard?" From what? From what I lived through in my childhood. He exploded. From the shouting, the fights, the emotional violence. You don't know what it's like growing up hearing your parents verbally destroy each other every day. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of small footsteps on the stairs. Ethan had woken up to the shouting and was coming down to see what was happening. "Mommy? Daddy? Why are you shouting?" he asked, still wearing the headphones. Everyone froze. Ethan had spoken clearly, showing that he could hear the argument even with the equipment. Jennifer knelt in front of her son and with trembling hands removed Ethan's headphones. "Son, can you hear me now?" "Yes, Mommy. I always could, but Daddy said it was our secret." Tears began to stream down Jennifer's face. "Ethan, my love, Daddy did something wrong. Very wrong." "I know, Mommy, but he said if I told, you wouldn't love me anymore." Richard collapsed into a chair, finally confronted with the magnitude of what he had done. His son, for 2 years, had lived in fear of losing his parents' love if he revealed the truth. "Ethan," said Jennifer, hugging the boy, "we will always love you. Always. And you will never have to keep secrets like this again." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Now continuing, Amanda, who had witnessed the entire scene from the kitchen door, approached hesitantly. "Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you should know that I documented everything I found out. It wasn't to hurt anyone, but to protect Ethan." Richard raised his head, his eyes red and tired. "You did the right thing, Amanda. I lost control of the situation a long time ago." Jennifer turned to her husband, still holding Ethan. "Richard, you need help. Therapy, psychological treatment. What you did was, it was a form of child abuse." "I know," he whispered. "I know it was. But I was so afraid that he would suffer like I suffered." "And you chose to make him suffer in a different way, to deprive him of a normal life." Mrs. Barbara approached her son. "Richard, dear, we all have childhood traumas, but we can't project our fears onto our children. Ethan is not you. He deserves to live his own life, make his own mistakes, have his own experiences." In the weeks that followed, the Thompson family underwent a radical transformation. Richard began intensive psychological therapy, finally confronting the traumas of his own childhood that had led him to make such destructive decisions. Ethan, in turn, underwent a complete medical evaluation. The tests confirmed that his hearing was perfect, but the 2 years of using the therapeutic headphones had caused some minor auditory processing issues, which could be corrected with proper speech therapy follow-up. The boy also began child therapy to deal with the confusion and fear he had experienced throughout that period. Dr. Robert, the child psychologist, explained to Jennifer that children in Ethan's situation often develop trust issues and anxiety. Ethan spent 2 years living a lie, being forced to participate in a charade. This can have lasting consequences if not treated properly. Amanda continued working for the family, now in a very different role. She had become a trusted figure for Ethan, someone who had protected him when he needed it most. Jennifer recognized the housekeeper's value and her courage in defending the child. "Amanda, I don't know how to thank you for what you did for my son," Jennifer said in a private conversation. "You saved Ethan from a terrible situation." "Mrs. Jennifer, I only did what anyone would do. Ethan is a special child. He deserved to be protected." "No, Amanda. Many people would have looked the other way, especially considering Richard's threats. You were brave." Ethan's readjustment to the world of sounds was gradual but emotional. The boy showed an insatiable curiosity for everything he had missed during those 2 years. Music, conversations, sounds of nature. Everything seemed new and fascinating to him. One especially memorable afternoon, Ethan discovered the piano in the living room of the house. Jennifer had played before marrying, but the instrument had been abandoned for years. "Mommy, what's that beautiful sound?" asked Ethan upon hearing Jennifer play a simple melody. "It's music, my love. Would you like to learn?" "Can I?" Jennifer hugged her son, tears of joy streaming down her face. All the simple experiences Ethan had missed now became precious moments of rediscovery. Richard watched these interactions with a mixture of guilt and relief. During his therapy sessions, he had begun to understand how his own unresolved traumas had led him to make such harmful decisions. "Dr. Williams," he said during a session, "I truly believed I was protecting my son. How could I have been so wrong? Richard, trauma can distort our perception of reality. You grew up in an environment where sound represented danger, shouting, arguments, emotional violence. Unconsciously, you associated hearing with suffering. But what now? How can I fix what I did? The first step is what you're already doing, recognizing the problem and seeking help. The second is working to rebuild your son's and your family's trust." 3 months after the truth was revealed, Ethan had made impressive progress. His auditory processing issues were being successfully corrected, and he had enrolled in a regular school for the first time in his life. Ethan's first school performance was an emotional milestone for the whole family. The boy had chosen to join the school choir, something unthinkable during the years he pretended to be deaf. Richard, Jennifer, Mrs. Barbara, and Amanda were in the audience when Ethan took the stage with the other students. His clear, tuned voice stood out among the other children, singing a song about family and forgiveness. During the performance, Richard couldn't hold back his tears. Jennifer held his hand, recognizing that despite all the mistakes made, they were still a family and could rebuild themselves. After the show, Ethan ran into his parents' arms. "Did you hear? I really sang." "We heard, my love," said Jennifer, "and it was the most beautiful thing we've ever heard." Ethan looked at his father, who was still fighting back tears. "Daddy, did you like it?" Richard knelt in front of his son. "Ethan, it was perfect. You are perfect. And I'm sorry for everything I did. So very sorry." "It's okay, Daddy. Aunt Amanda said that sometimes adults do wrong things because they're scared. Were you scared?" "Very scared, son. But I won't let fear make me make bad decisions anymore." 6 months later, the family had established a new routine. Richard continued therapy, now also attending family sessions with Jennifer and Ethan. The couple was working to rebuild their relationship, learning to communicate in healthy ways. Ethan flourished in his new life. He made friends at school, developed a passion for music, and showed a cheerful, curious personality that had been suppressed during the years of the charade. Patricia, Ethan's former sign language therapist, visited the family to say goodbye officially. She had been relieved when she learned the truth had finally been revealed. "How are you, Ethan?" she asked. "I'm great, Aunt Patricia. Now I can hear everything: music, little birds, even Grandpa's snoring when he sleeps in his armchair." Everyone laughed, including Mrs. Barbara, who had temporarily moved into her children's home to help with the family's transition. On a special evening, Jennifer organized a dinner for the whole family, including Amanda, who had become much more than an employee. She was now considered part of the family. "I'd like to make a toast," said Jennifer, raising her glass, "to truth, to courage, and to second chances." "And to Amanda," added Ethan, "who saved me." Amanda was moved. "Ethan, you saved yourself by being brave enough to tell the truth." Richard stood up. "I also want to say a few words. I spent years trying to protect my son from a world I considered dangerous, but I ended up creating a prison for him. Amanda, you had the courage I lacked. Jennifer, Mom, Ethan, I apologize for all the suffering I caused." "Richard," said Mrs. Barbara, "what matters is that you recognized your mistakes and are working to correct them. That's what counts now." After dinner, while Ethan played in the garden, Richard and Jennifer talked about the future. "Do you think he'll be able to overcome all this?" asked Richard. "I'm sure. Ethan is a resilient child, and now he has the truth on his side." "What about us? Will we be able to recover as a couple?" Jennifer thought for a few moments. "That will depend on you continuing your treatment and on both of us learning to trust each other again. But I want to try, Richard. For us and for Ethan." 1 year after the truth was revealed, Ethan had become a completely different child. Confident, sociable, and happy, he was actively involved in school and had developed talents that had remained hidden during the years of the deception. On a Saturday afternoon, Richard found Ethan in the garden playing a small flute he had received in music lessons. "Daddy, do you want to hear the song I learned today?" "Of course, son." Ethan played a simple but moving melody. Richard watched him with admiration and a deep feeling of gratitude for having the chance to witness his son's natural talent. "That was beautiful, Ethan. You're very talented." "Thank you, Daddy. You know what's funny?" "What?" "Sometimes I remember that time with the headphones and it feels like a bad dream, as if it wasn't real." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. "Ethan, do you remember being sad back then?" "Yes, I do. I felt very alone, even when you were nearby. It was like I was inside a bubble. And now?" Ethan smiled broadly. "Now I can hear everything. And the best part is that I can hear you and Mommy saying you love me." These words deeply touched Richard, who hugged his son tightly. "Ethan, I love you more than anything in this world, and I promise I'll never do anything to hurt you again." "I know, Daddy, and I love you too." That evening, during the weekly family therapy, Dr. Robert commented on the remarkable progress of the whole family. "It's impressive how you've managed to rebuild after such a complex situation." "Doctor," said Jennifer, "we still have difficult moments. Sometimes Ethan wakes up scared, thinking he still needs to wear the headphones, and Richard still struggles with guilt. That's normal and expected. The healing process isn't linear. What matters is that you're facing the challenges together as a family." Ethan, who participated in the sessions when appropriate, raised his hand. "Dr. Robert, can I say something?" "Of course, Ethan." "I don't want to talk about the headphones anymore. I want to talk about the good things happening now." The psychologist smiled. "And what are those good things?" "Well, I learned to play the flute. I made 3 new friends at school. Grandma Barbara taught me how to make chocolate cake, and Daddy takes me to listen to the birds in the park every Sunday." Richard and Jennifer exchanged emotional glances. Ethan's focus had completely shifted from the trauma to the positive experiences of his new life. 2 years after the truth was revealed, the Thompson family's transformation was complete. Richard had become a more present and emotionally available father. Jennifer had reduced her business trips to spend more time with the family, and Ethan had blossomed into a happy and talented child. Amanda remained with the family, no longer just as an employee, but as an additional maternal figure for Ethan. She had witnessed the extraordinary human capacity for healing and redemption. One special morning, Ethan woke up and announced he wanted to seriously learn to play piano. "Mummy, can you teach me?" "Of course, my love, but why did you decide this now?" "Because I want to play a song for Aunt Amanda on her birthday, a song that shows how grateful I am for her helping me." Jennifer was moved. "What song do you want to play?" "I don't know yet, but it has to be a song about heroes. Because Aunt Amanda is my heroine." Amanda, who had overheard the conversation from the kitchen, had to sit down to keep from breaking down in tears. During all those difficult months, she had simply followed her instinct to protect a child. She never imagined she would be seen as a heroine. On Amanda's birthday, the whole family gathered in the living room. Ethan, after weeks of intense practice, was ready for his special performance. "Aunt Amanda," he said solemnly, "this song is for you. It's called Thank You, My Heroine, and I made it up myself." Ethan sat at the piano and began to play. The melody was simple but deeply moving. Every note seemed to carry gratitude and love. When he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Amanda approached Ethan and hugged him tightly. "Ethan, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever received in my life." "Did you really like it?" "I liked it more than anything." Richard approached them. "Amanda, I'll never be able to thank you enough for saving my family. You gave me back my son." "Dr. Richard, you saved yourself when you decided to get help. I just did what was right." Jennifer joined the group. "Amanda, you're part of this family now, forever." Mrs. Barbara, watching the scene from her armchair, smiled with satisfaction. At 72 years old, she had witnessed many stories of redemption, but few as touching as this one. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Richard and Jennifer talked about the future. "Sometimes I still can't believe we managed to overcome all that," said Jennifer. "Me neither. 3 years ago, I was destroying our family without even realizing it. Today we're closer than ever. Ethan is an amazing child, isn't he?" "He is. And to think I almost deprived the world of knowing this wonderful personality. It still hurts to think about it." "Richard, what matters is that you changed. We all changed. Ethan taught us about forgiveness and resilience." "True. And Amanda taught us about courage and doing the right thing even when it's hard." In the next room, Ethan slept soundly, lulled by the natural sounds of the night, crickets, wind in the trees, the distant noises of the city, sounds he had rediscovered and learned to love after years of forced silence. His nightstand no longer held the headphones that had once been his prison. Instead, there were music books, simple sheet music and a small flute, symbols of a full and authentic life. 3 years after the truth was revealed, the Thompson family had become an example of how love, truth, and forgiveness can overcome even the most complex situations. Ethan, now 8 years old, had become one of the best students in his class. His passion for music had grown, and he was participating in the school choir and learning guitar with a private teacher. On a special afternoon, Ethan received an unexpected proposal from his music teacher. "Ethan, would you like to participate in a Young Talents competition?" "What kind of competition?" "It's a statewide competition for children who demonstrate exceptional musical abilities. I thought you might be interested." Ethan felt excited but also a little nervous. "Can I talk to my parents first?" "Of course. And remember, it doesn't matter if you win or not. What's important is sharing your talent." That evening, Ethan told his family about the proposal. Everyone was excited about the opportunity. "Son," said Richard, "the decision is yours, but know that we will be proud of you regardless of the outcome." "I want to participate," Ethan decided, "but I want to play the song I composed for Aunt Amanda." "Are you sure?" asked Jennifer. "You could choose a more well-known piece." "No, Mom. That song tells our story. It tells how love and truth can change everything." On the day of the competition, the whole family was present. Richard, Jennifer, Mrs. Barbara, and Amanda took seats in the front row of the auditorium. Ethan confidently walked onto the stage, sat at the piano, and addressed the audience. "My name is Ethan Thompson. I'm 8 years old, and I'm going to play a song I composed for someone very special. This song is about heroes who appear when we need them most." He began to play "Thank You, My Heroine," but this time he had added new chords and a second part that made the composition even richer and more moving. The auditorium fell into absolute silence during the performance. When Ethan finished, there were a few seconds of quiet before the audience erupted into enthusiastic applause. Ethan won second place in the competition, but to his family he had achieved something much more important, the full expression of his talent and personality. After the ceremony, a local journalist approached the family. "I'd like to do a story about Ethan. It's rare to see such a young child with so much talent and emotional maturity." Richard and Jennifer exchanged glances. They had decided to keep the story of the headphones a secret to protect Ethan, but they realized it might be time to share their experience. "Would it be possible to discuss this at home?" asked Jennifer. "It's a somewhat complex story." A week later, journalist Sarah Johnson visited the Thompson family. Ethan had agreed to tell his story, feeling it might help other children in similar situations. "Ethan," asked Sarah, "how did you develop this passion for music?" "Actually, I could always hear music, but there was a time when I pretended I couldn't." "What do you mean?" Ethan told his story with impressive maturity for his age, explaining how he had spent 2 years pretending to be deaf to protect his father's feelings. "But I'm not angry with Daddy," explained Ethan. "He was scared and wanted to protect me. Sometimes adults do the wrong things when they're afraid." The article, when published, made a big impact in the community. Many mental health professionals commented on the importance of the story for raising awareness about how untreated trauma can affect entire families. Dr. Robert, the family psychologist, was interviewed about the case. "The Thompson story shows how truth, even when painful, is always the best path." and how love and family support can overcome any trauma. Richard, who had initially been apprehensive about the public exposure, realized that sharing their experience was helping other families. "I've received letters from parents dealing with similar situations," he told Jennifer. "People who recognized in our story their own fears and unresolved traumas." The public exposure brought an unexpected opportunity for Ethan. A specialized music school for young talents offered him a full scholarship. "It's an honor to have Ethan in our institution," said the school director, "not just for his musical talent, but for the maturity and resilience he demonstrates." 5 years after the truth was revealed, Ethan, now 10 years old, had become an extraordinary child. His musical talent had blossomed, but more important was the empathetic and wise personality he had developed through his experiences. Amanda, who had remained with the family all these years, watched Ethan's growth with pride. "Sometimes I can hardly believe he's the same timid and frightened boy I met 5 years ago," she commented to Jennifer. "Amanda, you were fundamental in this transformation. Without your courage, Ethan would still be living that lie." "No, Mrs. Miller. Ethan had the strength within him from the beginning. I just helped reveal it." On a special afternoon, Ethan was invited to perform at a charity event for children with actual hearing disabilities. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone in the family. "Son," said Richard before the performance, "are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes, Dad. I want to play for children who truly cannot hear, to show that music can be felt in other ways too." During his performance, Ethan played not only piano but also guitar and flute. Between songs, he briefly told his story, explaining how he had pretended to be deaf and how it taught him to value the gift of hearing. The audience was moved not only by Ethan's musical talent, but by his message of gratitude and overcoming. After the event, a 12-year-old girl who was actually deaf approached Ethan with the help of an interpreter. "She wants to know if you can teach music to children like her," translated the interpreter. Ethan thought for a few moments. "Tell her I would love to learn how to do that, and that I will study to be able to teach music in a way she can understand and feel." This conversation planted a seed in Ethan's mind. In the following months, he began researching teaching methods for people with hearing disabilities. "Mom," he said one evening, "when I grow up, I want to be a music teacher for children who truly cannot hear." "What a beautiful idea, my love. What made you think of that?" "Well, I know what it's like to go without hearing music. It was very sad when I wore those headphones. If I can help children who really can't hear to feel music in other ways, I think that would be really cool." Richard, who was listening to the conversation from the kitchen, felt a wave of emotion. His son had transformed a traumatic experience into compassion for others. It was the final redemption of that entire painful story. 6 years after the truth was revealed, the Thompson family had found a perfect balance. Richard continued in occasional therapy, but had completely overcome the traumas that led him to make such harmful decisions. Jennifer had found a better balance between work and family, and Ethan had become a talented, empathetic, and determined preteen. Amanda, now officially considered part of the family, had decided to study child psychology, inspired by her experience with Ethan. "I want to help other children like I helped Ethan," she explained. "I want to be the voice for those who cannot speak for themselves." On a special evening, the family decided to perform a closing ritual. They went to the garden of the house and together buried the headphones that had caused so much suffering. "This is the official end of the lie," said Richard, "and the complete beginning of our new life based on truth." Ethan placed a small plaque at the spot where they buried the headphones. It read, "Here we buried fear. Love grows here." Jennifer hugged the whole family. "You know what I love most about our story?" "What?" everyone asked. "That it proves it's never too late to fix our mistakes, and that true love always finds a way to win." Ethan looked at the stars in the sky. "And I love that now I can hear everything. You telling me you love me, the birds singing, my own music. But you know what's the coolest part?" "What, son?" asked Richard. "That now I can also speak the truth about everything. And the truth is much more beautiful than any lie." That night, as the family entered the house, Ethan ran to the piano and played a new melody he had composed. It was a song about second chances, about families that heal, about heroes who appear when we least expect it. The chords flowed through the house, filling every room with harmony. It was the sound of truth, reconciliation, and unconditional love. Richard stopped to listen, remembering the years when he had deprived his son of making these sounds. Now every note was a reminder of how they had been able to overcome the impossible and reconnect as a family. Jennifer joined him, and together they watched Ethan play with passion and freedom. Amanda appeared in the kitchen doorway, smiling as she dried her hands on her apron. "You know what I think when I see Ethan playing like that?" said Jennifer. "What?" asked Richard. "I think we saved not only our son, but our own ability to truly love." Richard nodded, his hand finding Jennifer's, and all of this started with Amanda having the courage to do the right thing, even when it was dangerous. "No," corrected Amanda, approaching. "All of this started with Ethan being brave enough to whisper a lullaby, even knowing there could be consequences." Ethan finished his song and turned to the family. "Did you like it?" "It was perfect," said Richard. "Just like you." "Just like all of us," added Jennifer. "Imperfect, but perfect for each other." That night, as Ethan slept soothed by the natural sounds of the night, Richard wrote in his personal journal, "Today marks exactly 6 years since I started forcing Ethan to live a lie. 6 years since I almost destroyed my family because of fear, but it also marks 6 years of an incredible journey of healing, forgiveness, and rediscovering what it truly means to love someone. Ethan is not just my son, he is my teacher. He taught me about courage, forgiveness, and the importance of truth. Amanda is not just our employee, she is our heroine, who had courage when I did not. Jennifer is not just my wife, she is my partner on the most difficult and rewarding journey of our lives. Today our house is full of music, laughter, and above all, truth. Ethan can hear everything, say everything, be everything he was meant to be. And me? I finally learned that protecting someone doesn't mean isolating them from the world, but standing by that person as they face the world with courage. This is our story, a story of how we almost lost everything because of fear, but gained everything back through love." End of story. Tell us what you thought of this story of overcoming and courage. Do you believe Richard made the right decision by seeking help? Was Amanda heroic in protecting Ethan? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love reading every sincere word. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.